The following presentation was recorded live in Los Angeles, California for the 24th Annual Convention of the International Association of Square Dance Callers. This is tape 22, Multi-Cycle Programming.
This is the multi-cycle lesson plan session for CALLERLAB Convention 1997 for the tape. And for those of you that have not met us, I want you to introduce in a nice round of applause for Nasser Shukayr from Shreveport, Louisiana. Nasser is chairman of the CALLERLAB RPM Committee, or Recruit, Promote, Maintain Committee, and which has a lot of things going on at one time and quite a few things going on right now. My name is Mike Seastrom. I'm from Thousand Oaks, California, about 50 miles up the road. It's nice to be here with all of you. Thank you for coming out this morning. Evidently, the microphone, the portable mic that we have been using in many of our sessions in this particular room, picks up radio frequencies from airplanes that fly overhead. Not many of those. Not too many of those, yeah. But since we are picking up some other information off the airplanes that may be classified or otherwise, we're not going to use this mic, and we'd like you to step to the microphone and talk to us with the microphone so that we can get you on tape and have you for posterity. Also, as many of you know, we've talked about this before, when the tapes are blank for long sections, it makes for people to go to sleep while they're listening to these tapes, and we want to have them awake and alert as we do this. I guess I'd like to start out by finding out how many of you are presently using some form of multi-cycle lesson plan, some starting multiple times each year. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, so maybe 10 of you. We're also looking to update our handout. Now, this handout that you have been handed this morning is the multi-cycle lesson plan preliminary report that was passed out at the National in San Antonio last June, and the names on the back were contact names that we had at that time of people using this plan and that would be willing to give information if phoned by someone to help them to maybe give them some ideas about formulating their own plan. So if any of you would be willing to list your name and address on a new document that we have coming out, we'd really like to put you down, because I think it would help in order to contact people all over so that someone could call you and you'd have a few minutes to talk with them and let them ask some questions about how you're making your plan work and what would you do different and what suggestions do you have. I think this kind of information is really invaluable, and we have found that in putting together this report that the biggest feedback we received was, isn't there anything more than this? But we tried to keep it to 2 pages and make it as a handout so that we could get the information out, and now we realize that people wanted a little bit more. So Nasser came up with a whole list of questions that in a question-answer format that we might be able to put together and anticipate which questions or what information people wanted, and that's right. That is now out now. It goes on and on and on and on, and we'd like to put your name on the back side of that if that's possible. So it is a long document. It's I guess about 10 pages long, and the CALLERLAB office now has the disk. They're going to go over that document and look at it and make sure that it's written in the right format and that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and the commas are in the right spots. And CALLERLAB tries real hard to make sure that the information that we publish is in a certain format and can be read easily and makes sense, and that there's words that are not misspelled and such. So once we check that and go through that process, we'd love to be able to put your name on the end of this document so that information can be passed out to other people. At this point in time, I'd like to turn over the microphone to Nasser and let him go ahead and talk about this multi-cycle program. And at any time during the session, if you have questions, comments, something that could be inserted right then, and if we say about another 10 words, your comment will go by the wayside, wave your hand wildly in the air, and one of us will run down and give you the microphone, or you come on up here, just make your way to the front, and we'll get you the microphone so you can put it on the tape. All righty? Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Seastrom. Mike. People say, why would you use this 10 plus 10, and what is it? We tried to publish in American Square Dance Magazine, tried to publish something in Direction. It takes a long time to get people to notice it. Every time we publish something, like the next time we publish will be, the 6th or 7th time in the last year. And people say, what is this? I've never heard of it. So you have a better mousetrap theory. What is it? If you build a better mousetrap, the world automatically adopts it. I think this is a better mousetrap. I don't feel that we have to get 100% of the world to use this plan. I feel that if we get 10% of the world to use this plan, that will have better results, and then the better mousetrap theory takes over. We expect to see this grow a lot. Why would you do the 10 plus 10 plan, or what is it? It's offering lessons more than once a year. Simply put, you talk to someone this time of year in March. Hey, how would you like to square dance? Yeah, I'd like that. Well, come join us in September. Everyone knows that by the time September gets here, most of them have found something else to do. This lets them say, come join us next Tuesday. Come join us 3 weeks from now. Another advantage is that the new dancers are the enthusiastic ones. Who's the most enthusiastic people in the club? It's the one that's been dancing 3 or 4 months. They become your recruiters. Under the old plan, by the time you start a new class, everyone's been in square dancing a year. They've become a little jaded. They're still excited, but not near as much. Start 3 or 4 classes a year, and we solve that problem. As to exactly how to do it is part of the handouts and so forth. I don't know of anyone who has started the 10+10 plan or the multi-cycle plan and really used it and then said it's not a good approach and then went back to the old way. I do know people who meant to start it and they tried to get a class going and it didn't quite make, so they'd try to get another class going and they'd try another and then they'd give up. I would maintain they've never been on multi-cycle because they never at any one time had 2 classes going at once. So this is important stuff.
I think, as Nasser was saying, the advantages of this plan is that you do offer square dancing more than one time a year. I know that both Nasser and I are using different systems and would like to tell you about how we run our programs and also would like to hear from you, because I think that if we can share that information, get it on tape, and get it available to CALLERLAB members and to others that want additional information on some examples on how this works, I think it would be tremendously helpful. Nasser was saying 10%. Initially, when we talked about this plan about a year ago, we said, boy, if we could just get 10% in the next year to start to use this plan, we'd see square dancing start to grow. And I'm hoping that down the line we might get 50 or 60%. A lot of it depends upon hall availability, depends upon how much of the year you have or much of the season you have to run your lessons. In this particular area where I'm working, I'm fortunate enough where I can work lessons all year round. I have a hall that is air conditioned, and even in the summer months, I find that we can keep our dancers coming and keep them having a good time, and so I'm at an advantage. In some areas where it just gets so terribly hot where you can't get people out and you don't have air-conditioned facilities, or for some reason the farming in the community begins at a certain time and all of a sudden they're gone. Or I was just in an area of Japan, and a certain time of year they all ski and they all go skiing, and you can't get them out to square dance when ski season comes. So there's certain limiting factors depending upon where you live and where you're located in your hall that are going to make it difficult for you to run a program exactly, say, like I'm running, or exactly like Nasser or someone else is running it. But I think the important thing is to try to make it work for you in the sense that you start classes more than once a year, and that you use your brand new dancers as your primary recruiters. The thing I like best about this program is that when you get your brand new dancers, say you're moving along 10 weeks. Now we work 17 weeks, but to go into this a little bit further as far as the introduction of what we're talking about, when we talk about multi-cycle lesson plan, we're talking about any lesson, any class that starts more than once a year. And any class that, a multi-cycle class is any class that is using some form of plan, some form of this multi-cycle plan. And I think that if you use this and start more than once a year, and you get into your first segment, and you're using your brand new dancers to recruit new dancers, they can dance with their friends immediately, right then and there. Whereas if you're running one class a year, by the time your brand new dancers get to the point where they're going to recruit again, they've already been through the whole program, whether if your destination is mainstream, they've been all the way through the mainstream program, and maybe they want to go on and stay dancing mainstream, or maybe do a little bit of a workshop or something, and they're not as apt to take their people, their new recruits, right to class and dance with them from day one again. Whereas in the multi-cycle plan, they absolutely can dance with their friends immediately. And they all come up to me and they say the same thing. You know, we're the smart ones here. We know this stuff already. But at the same time, it gives those dancers that are not your newest, the recruiting new dancers, it gives them a chance to review the program that you've just taken them through. So it increases their skills and gives them a chance to hear the calls all over again, but they already know them. But it just reinforces them. And many have come up to me and said, you know, it's so nice to hear this a second time. We've been dancing these calls, but I really forgot when we first taught them that you can do it from here or here. I forgot the difference between half sachet and roll a half sachet and that kind of thing. So you get the reinforcement that you need to help your dancers go through. The other thing about dancing a shorter period in an evening, very often when your first time they come in as new dancers, and they're only dancing for, say, an hour, or in my case, an hour and a half, when they walk out the door, they want more. They're not dragging out the door. There are a lot of people that first start to square dance have not been doing a lot of physical exercise and a lot of twirling and moving. They're a little bit tired at the end of the evening. If you leave them walking out the door without dragging out the door, they're ready to come back next week. They say, we'll see you next week. They still got some energy, and they're not dragging out. Well, by the time they can stay for more than one session at a time, and say for the whole evening, or in your case, Nasser, I think you're doing 3 groups on the same night, right? By the time they can dance 2/3 of the night in Nasser's class, their stamina's been built up a little bit, and they're ready to do a little bit more. So I think you are doing something better for them as far as their health and their physical well-being, but at the same time, their emotional state when they leave the dance is that they want more. They're ready to go. And so I think this is an important part of it. I'll certainly bring it back to you.
You can, on the preliminary document that I think you'll all have a copy of, is originally written with it being in mind that you're going to have a separate night, you're going to have a separate hall, and you have another night, and all you do is lessons on that night. So run into a lot of people. How many are like this? You don't have that luxury. You only have it. How many have to have the class and the club on the same night for various reasons? Availability of hall. It's not. We're running one because of this. We had class on a separate night because of this in Shreveport, Louisiana. We started the class and the club in 2 classes at the same time in the club. We call alternating tips. There's different color badges is how we identify them. Someone's a brand new dancer. They've never danced before. They start with a blue badge. They'll dance every 3rd tip. So after they have been doing that for several months, we'll start a new class. The blue badge people get a red badge. They'll dance in the beginner tips with the blue badge. They'll also dance in the red badge tips. After a while, they'll eventually get a white badge. They're free to dance in all the tips. This is something that works for us. You do call 3 hours nonstop, but hey, it's like the CALLERLAB convention. It's like a practice for it to build up your stamina. I think. I think that's good. I think if you start to plan that you need to commit to 3 cycles no matter what. If you start a class, let's say one of your segments, because it's the Christmas holidays, whatever reason, it's just one student shows up, what do you do? And I think you need to make a commitment to see the plan through, to go ahead and go through 3 full cycles, even if the results are less than what you expect. In the case of the Valley Trailers that's here, they have their momentum built up. They don't really have to worry as much as most of us about, are we going to get a big class, because they're already a big club. After it's going your way, the ball is rolling. It works to your advantage big time. Sometimes about 70% of calling is what I call off-mic politicking. You have to talk to people one-on-one. The new dancers need to get it to understand that they're new. They're going to dance like every 3rd tip. I think that makes sense. They say, well, why do these people with the other badges get to dance more? They've been here longer. You're going to be in their place. You can dance every tip if you like. You can dance solid for 3 hours.
Yeah, we got a question?
Bill Horst, Los Angeles. In my group, I have the blue badges. The first group dance continuously, and then they go home halfway. But you interleave your groups, Nasser?
We tried it that way. We felt that there was a social bonding, that square dancing is a social activity. If we have the new people for an hour, and then have like the intermediate people for an hour, and the seriously advanced dancers for an hour, then when they move up to another group, they say, who are these people? They've been square dancing 3 or 4 months, and we don't know them. And that's why we do alternating tips. And there were some, there's never problems, there were some opportunities. Some people said that was like a plus dancer, we're not getting enough floor time. And said, well, you could like learn the mainstream again, but there are some opportunities. You have to look at it as a positive. By the fact that on a normal club, it was like, this is just club night. We're going to call it club night. You kind of call a lower level that everyone can do. With this system, when it's like time for a club tip, you put the hammer down, and if they can't dance it, you got a red badge tip coming up, and I think it works better. I think it depending on how you look at it, I think there's a lot of positives that are available.
And I think the key here is that you can use it in a variety of ways. Nasser finds that this system works for his club, and Bill, like you do, we run it where from 7 to 8:30, I'm teaching the basic program. Now, instead of starting every 10 weeks, you're starting every 10 weeks, right, Nasser?
We start every 4 months now. We started in September. We found January is a real good time to recruit. People want to make a New Year's resolution, they can change the deal. We currently don't do a class in the summer. In the past, we never had a big turnout during the summer, so we said, hey, we'll just drop it. Our hall is full, and you can't find a parking place, and there's not enough chairs to sit down, and why do we want to run all these classes? You know?
Yeah. Bill, why don't you step up to the mic? It should work. They were saying that we were picking up radio signals. Oh, earlier. Okay. The airplanes aren't flying us. Bill?
Bill Addison from Maryland. We have a little different thing going in the metropolitan Washington area that some of you, that may fit in some of your areas. We're starting classes once every 12 weeks. We are fortunate enough to have a hall that is large enough to accommodate to be broken down into 3 halls. And so we start 3 12-week cycles, and we have 3 callers that operate these 12-week cycles. We take the dancers, the new dancers come into one of the cycles, and we take them all the way through. Since the metropolitan Washington area is a plus entry level, we take them from first night all the way through plus in 36 weeks. And then we pick up another class. We go year-round. We have that advantage. 2 cautions. One, structure when you do this, and I apologize, I should have brought our curriculum with us, but it's in the car at Dulles. 2 cautions. One is to structure a curriculum that is doable in the 36-week period. And you get into the argument of standard versus extended positioning. We hold to the standard positioning. 2, you must have callers who aren't hungry. Now, that's hard to find. We have, Tommy, how many? We got 90 callers in the area, something like that? 80 or 90 callers. Yeah, some number, some ridiculous number. And we were able to find 3 who weren't hungry. By that I mean we have agreed ethically not to recruit these dancers we're teaching for our clubs. Now, we allow the clubs to come in, and if they want to hold a student night, they can do that. But one of the rules is that in order for a club in the area to invite the people from this group, is called the Boomerangs, to invite boomerang dancers, they must extend the invitation to all of the classes in the area for that evening, so that we're trying to limit the pointing of dancers to a particular club. This, by the way, was started by a dancer organization rather than by the callers themselves, and it's another way of the cycle.
I think the important thing to realize here is there's a lot of ways you can run it, and many of the problems that you face in a multi-cycle lesson plan or a class like this is the same kind of problems that you'd face in a traditional class, the same kind of questions and answers. So we've got a portable mic that's going. Chuck, why don't you go first, and then right down here with Chuck, and we'll do Tony right up in here, okay? All right. Yeah, flick on that switch on the top, just the on.
Okay, I live in a central part of Arizona, kind of a real rural community, and I started this program, and I start them every 10 to 12 weeks, however they fit in. You know, you start in September, and you start running into Thanksgiving and Christmas, so you kind of split it. But I try to start a new class every 10 or 12 weeks, and I've had 3 going simultaneously, and I do something like Nasser does. I alternate tips. And the first tip's for the very beginners, the next one's for the next one, and the next one, so on. And the newer dancers don't have the stamina yet, so they don't mind sitting out a little longer. But what happens, like Mike's saying, the fellowship, you know, they get to sit out there and visit with one another when they're not dancing. But the good part about this program that I'm using is, how many of you guys have had dancers that just can't quite keep up, you know? They're behind. Or you've got that one that just gung-ho, you can't give them enough, okay? And they kind of regulate themselves. I have a couple that it took them about twice as long to go through, but they're just, oh yes, my entry is mainstream. I don't try to structure it that we're going to go for 12 weeks and that's it. They start at the beginning and they keep on going until they get to mainstream. And this one couple, they just, you know, they had some other places to go. They weren't learning quite so fast as the rest of them. And they just regulated themselves. When I started the next group, they just fell back into that group. Whereas I've had other people that want to go a little faster, and they listen to what's being taught, and the first thing you know, they move up to the one that's ahead of them and keep up with it. So the dancers just kind of regulate themselves. They dance in the group they want to dance with, and if they're not dancing, they're visiting, and it just becomes a big family. And I started with 4 dancers, and in a year and a half, I built it up to 52. So by just doing it one night a week, it's the only night I have available.
think the other thing is that it makes it like a party. There's a lot of things going on, different things going, and it does create a real party-like atmosphere. I think that's true. Chuck?
Chuck Jaworski, Chicago. I convinced my one club that I call for back in Chicago this idea. I sold them on the idea, and they tried it. It started out fine in September. We had some problems in January. It didn't continue. Since then, we've convinced the local Dancers Association, Lake County, which is north of Chicago, to do this as an association next year. I think my program is similar to Mike's. We started on the Sunday night at 7 o'clock, and they went for an hour and a half. The intention in January was then to move that group to 8:30 and start a new group at 7. The 7 o'clock group really objected to moving to 8:30. Well, it became academic later on because we never got the second group going. And I realize now that was a mistake because what Nasser said, we should have been committed to the second group no matter how many people there were. Unfortunately, the opening night of the second class, I was ill, and the substitute we had did a very bad job, I thought, unfortunately, and we never got those second people. So, Mike, how do you handle the second group you start? You start at 7, 8:30, I gather. Then what happens with the second group you start?
Well, I was fortunate enough when I stepped into this that this plan was had already started. You know, it originally started where the first group was dancing from 7 to 8:30, and then from 8:30 to about 9:30 initially. The second group was the club members. They were coming afterwards, and they were doing just workshopping at the program the club was dancing. When they started the second group was a pretty good group, so they were able to then move the first group that was from 7 to 8:30, then to 8 to 10.
So you did shift them.
We did shift them, and we didn't have much of a problem shifting because we're dancing on a Tuesday night. Now, as we get closer to 10:30, or 10 o'clock, I should say, on a Tuesday night, we start getting people that are ready to go home. And what I generally do is make the last tip just a fun tip, and I start in using that second phase, teaching right away. Instead of possibly reviewing, because many of those people in the second phase come enough to the first phase, or at least to the last part of the first phase, where they're dancing and they're warmed up and their mind's working a little bit. So I do vary a little bit, and I do it if they have to go home a little bit earlier, they got to get up early to work. We kind of work around that. But
okay, and Nasser, does your club do rounds between tips?
We used to till we started having so many classes. We don't have time no more.
Okay. The second thing is when you do, like, let's say the beginners are the red badges, we'll say, and then you do a blue tip. What happens when you get a square of blue dancers up and they need 2 couples? And right away say, oh, you can come on and do that. How do you handle that?
That does happen occasionally. You get people that's will be in the wrong tip. They're not ready for it. They've been square dancing 3 weeks. They're in a tip they don't belong. We go ahead and call the level. Then you do a lot of off-mic politicking after that and explain to them, hey, you're not quite there, but soon you will be, and just hang in there. I think, would you say that 70% of calling is off mic? Politicking, maybe 90.
One last question, too. Does anybody object to the fact they're all paying the same fee and not able to dance the same amount of time?
That was part of the initial off mic politicking. They haven't objected yet so far. Of course, I'm not. They're dancing tonight. I'm not there. It'll probably fall apart while I'm here in Los Angeles.
That's what happened with our group.
It won't. We carefully train our substitute callers. They know the callers that substitute when I'm not there or normally support the class anyway, and they know what's going on. That's a valuable thing to have. I want to talk a little later on about your committee when someone wants to move up and they're not ready. They handle it.
Okay. All right. First, Tony, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, Tony Nevison, Mount Shasta, California. Nasser, I was wondering, or anybody in the room, we have one of those areas that in the summertime everyone's out farming or something that's very hard to keep a group. How do you keep a cycle going? You have a third cycle going, but they've only gotten 2/3 of the way through their basics, and now it's time, they're gone. Is there an answer for that? Has anyone faced that?
They have a lot of places during the summer people can't attend, like, your regular club structure, starting in September, graduate in May, plus workshop during the summer. Someone's gone for the summer, they get back in September, they're not with the class, you've lost them. Ideally, this plan lets them get back in. If they can't dance like the third segment, maybe they can dance the second. They participate. There's no good answer for that. I sure like the way what happens in the Valley Trailers? Someone comes in, they go through lessons, and they just can't get it. I mean, let's be honest. But it's time to move up to another class. They say, oh, goody, I'm going to move up to the other class because this class I didn't understand, and the new class I'm going to be a lot better at.
Good question. I'll get to that in just a minute. Just to answer Tony's question, I think if your group has to discontinue for part of the year, you need to keep contact with them in some way. In other words, I would imagine that you'd have the telephone numbers of these people, and you'd also have their addresses so that you could send them a postcard and say, hey, there's going to be a special dance here, or if you can hold something that's another dance through the summertime or something, then you'll get some of them attending just to keep their enthusiasm up, or just to keep touch with them. Even if you have a picnic, for as many as can come. I know the group that I call for has a lot of social events during the year, and we're lucky enough to go year-round, but I would suggest that if you're not lucky enough to do that, if you can keep contact with these people either through social events or through a simple dance, a fun night to have them come out and dance and enjoy, just to keep tabs of them, it would help them to transition them to when you start up again. And that's the only suggestion I can make. I know that there's just times when you can't do it all year round, and I know in Shasta area, everybody is gone. They're out in vacation, and it's fishing time, and there's a lot of things going on. So I would suggest that if you can keep contact with them. The other thing is, I think is important, even with the traditional classes, is make sure when people don't show up, have somebody that is working your class, or that your coordinators or co-coordinators or yourself, if you're running the class, that can call these people and say, God, we missed you last week, and I'd love to have you come back, and if you come a little bit early, and we'll go through the stuff that we taught last week so that they know you care about them, and it's a personal touch that I think makes a big difference, whether it's in a multi-cycle lesson plan or in a traditional class. So, and then, just a second, Bob, if we get the microphone back to Bob. Oh, okay, we got it there, and then Bob in the back. Just to answer Nasser's question, and this happens in a traditional class, although the thing I like about the multi-cycle class is if someone cannot progress or really isn't ready, in your view, to progress to the next program, I personally go to them and I say, would you guys stay in this phase and help out our newer dancers? We got a whole bunch of newer dancers. We can use you guys to help out. And if you'd help to angel them, I know you know this stuff, but it would help those new guys, and at the same time, we're going to be teaching a lot of calls coming up and so on. So rather than get too confusing, why don't you guys just stay in this and help us out? Well, most of them, because you're not telling them to come back next year to class, or why don't you go to Joe's class down the road or something, are fine with that, and they don't have a problem. I'll either talk to them or our class coordinators talk to them, but they usually know coming in as we get to that point, because we're already talking to our Phase 1 dancers that we got a new class, like we have a new class starting the first week in May, and I'm already talking to those dancers about bringing their friends and dancing with them, because I want them to dance with their new people. I want them to come and dance the first phase that they've already learned. I want them to learn that stuff again and reinforce it, but I want them to dance with their friends and then stay along and dance further. Those that have a hard time, and sometimes it's even several weeks into our second phase when they're just overloaded. We're into the mainstream program by that time, and you start teaching walk and dodges and scoot backs and a lot of things, and boy, things are just going over their head. They need to really go back and review trades and runs and circulates and things like that. So I try to encourage them, stay and dance with your friends, and when they, and then join with them. You can be dancing the same phase when they start phase 2. You'll be dancing right with them. And most of the time, I find it's easier than when we used to have to, when we ran a traditional class and we'd go back and tell them, why don't you guys come back next year? That's hard. That's a real hard thing to do. Yeah, they don't come back. Yeah. Yes.
Bill Eiler from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was extremely lucky in my square dance experience that the club that I started with a multi-cycle plan. So in 1984, I became their club caller, and we're now involved in our 41st basic class. So it's 3 times a year, and it just goes on and on. It's been a cycle. So there's nothing new for us to learn. And what I've noticed in calling for a number of clubs in the Albuquerque area that do not use a multi-cycle plan is that their energy is gone, and their energy is not towards newer dancers. Whereas the base club that I work with is very new dancer oriented, very social oriented, and has a very high retention over traditional once a year groups. In ours, we start in January, May, and September, and it's always worked very well because we're in this routine over and over. Like I said, we're going to be starting our 42nd class this summer. We don't have in our area the situation with people going in and out of town in Albuquerque because it's kind of normal, great place to be all year long. A little promo there. But within the class, we use the basic program as an actual destination level for those dancers to know that they have really accomplished something, and that's the peak graduation that we use. We notify and we tell people, and we give them diplomas for mainstream and plus and advanced and challenge and all that. But basic is the most important program in our club that we work with this program. Also, during that, we also have we try to keep the floor level by inserting at least one mixer every class night, so that everybody learns something new and everybody is able to participate.
That's great. Then when you do teach mainstream or plus, that's on a different night?
Basic mainstream the same night.
Basic and mainstream the same night. Okay. Comment back from Bob, back in the back, and then right back up to Dick. Okay, great. Bob?
Bob Pointer, Defuniak Springs, Florida. We just started at 1010 this year. When I first moved to the area 5 years ago, they taught lessons on the same night as they had the club. You only had an hour to do it, and there were no mainstream clubs. Everything was plus, and they expected you to do it in 30 weeks. Well, it took me 5 years, but I finally convinced them that a separate night for class is the only way to go in their area. So we started the 1010. I've run into every problem that you've talked about. There is a solution to some of them. I had a lady who was, at the time she started class, was 5 months pregnant. So she developed a problem at about the 10-week level, the first 10 weeks. And the problem was that her doctor said too much exercise. They were afraid she was going to lose the baby. So this 1010 worked perfect for them, because when she does have the child, she can come in on the next 10 week that comes up, and she's waiting for that. She's ready, because she will come back. And I've also had people who go on vacation, because in the area where we're at, it's also a lot of snowbirds. I've had snowbirds come down who have been in lessons for 3 weeks and want to continue their lessons with us. And with a 1010, it works out beautifully. I start, it's on a Sunday night, the very first 10-week group danced for 2.5 hours. We went from 6 to 8:30. The second group came in 3 weeks ago. We dance an hour and 15 minutes with the second 10-week people, the ones who are just starting on their very first 10 weeks. The second 10-week people are there as angels, basically re-emphasizing and relearning their basics. I got them through the basic program in 10 weeks with that 2.5 hours. Now they are better dancers for it. I really have no problem with the 1010, except when I get to my third 10-week starting class, I've got to add a half hour. This is not really a problem, because the hall was built by the square dancers. It's paid for. We don't have to pay rent, because it's the Dancers Association that's putting the class on, not the clubs. It's a joint effort with all of the clubs. And maybe you guys don't have that advantage. I'm very thankful that we have it in our area. And I was glad to see this 1010 come along, because I think it's the way to go. I still have one club that does the 1 hour before the club, and I'm trying to convince them that I need 2 hours. And I told them that I cannot teach a class until we get the 2 hours. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Bob. Comment in front from... He added an extra hour to that third class. That was the comment, was what did he do with that third group, and he added an extra hour to that class. Dick?
Yeah, I'm Dick Hoddenfield from Los Angeles area. And I have a comment and a question. My comment is, Mike didn't tell you the whole story about the people that don't do real well in his class. He sends them to me. I see them. My question is to Nasser. You have 3 groups going at the same time? How long are your tips? These people are sitting a long time. I think I'd have trouble with new dancers. They're romping and stomping to go, and I can't get them to sit.
We have a Mr. Marker board. It's a big poster, and it's got a little, it's a high-tech gadget. It's a little fluorescent orange arrow that points down the side of the poster board and points to what tip we're on. And it's a space-age connector, connects this arrow to the poster. And it looks like a clothespin, actually. And you call a tip and you move the little arrow down. And everyone can see, hey, you know, I've got a blue badge, and they look on Mr. Marker board and they can see when their time is. There are some people that became unhappy because they danced at the highest levels that we offered, and we're only getting to dance their program, their chosen program, 4 times a night. We start a new tip every 15 minutes on the clock. We don't have announcements. We make them, or we suggest that the club president Xerox all the announcements and hand it out there when we find that it's more effective. This met some opposition. In fact, she suggested that I write down all the calls I was going to use that night and Xerox them. But we convinced her. I didn't want to give the wrong impression. For a long time, for more than a year, we did an 8+8 plan. We had 6 classes a year. We start a new class every 2 months. You don't have to have big classes to build a big club if you've got 6 a year. If you just do the math, let's say your class has 5 students. 6 classes a year is 30 students. How many had a class of 30 students last year? And it adds up.
Mr. Marker Board?
Mr. Marker Board. You know, I don't know whether you catch this. This man has a real dry sense of humor, and those of you that are on the internet and have a chance to experience Nasser's messages, understand his sense of humor. High-tech gadget. It's a clothespin, right? That moves this arrow.
It's a connector.
A connector. I'm sorry. I also want to make a comment about Dick and Gail. Both run very successful traditional classes in this area and have just a number of new dancers, tons of them, and it's a situation where you got a great couple that works together and good clubs and momentum, and that's what we're all trying to get to where you have that momentum and where your new dancers are bringing new people in, and you're treating these people great. And the comment that Nasser had made about the half an hour, there's about half an hour then sometimes between where the first people that come in would dance again. I think it's important in that case that they have food at your class. You know. I don't know if you have food, but we have food at ours, and it always goes over real good. If you're not, actually, we've gotten some I should say some younger dancers, some teenage dancers in our group because they come with their parents or with their grandmother or someone, and we had one that actually his grandmother paid for him so that he could. She felt guilty because he was always back there eating all the time, and so he ate for about 6 or 7 weeks, and he was back there, and we'd kind of comment that he was the person that sampled all the food, and if Jeremy didn't tip over, the food was okay to eat, you know. And finally, after about 7 weeks or so, I said we had a square in the back, needed one guy because we had some extra ladies, and I said, Jeremy, help us out, jump in there. And he jumped right in there and danced. He'd been eating and watching, and so he jumped in there, and then once he started dancing, and he started bringing his friends, and all of a sudden we've got about a square of young people in there, and it's all because of food. So I think you should have food. And down in Louisiana, you guys should have some crawfish and some good stuff. Any other comments? Yeah, very good.
I have a question back on something Nasser said earlier. I'm Laura Nystrom from San Jose, California, Caller's partner. You were talking about the callers who help you with your evenings so that you have backups like when you're here. And I wondered, where do they come from? How experienced are they? What do you do about paying them? Are they volunteers?
Did you clone yourself? There's a... I like this. Have you heard of cloning? No, it's called mentoring. I'll help them. I'll help them. I'll advise them. All they got to do is be at my class, and then I'll give them all the help they want. We learned this kind of the hard way. When I had to be out of town, we had a substitute caller. And I come back the next week, and the class wasn't there, and so, so we had to do a better job of indoctrinating the substitutes to what we were trying to do, which. I think the difference is on a traditional approach, you're going to teach a move, pick a move. You're going to teach spin the top. Now, quite honestly, you're going to go until every square gets it. We have Mr. Marker Board. We have to start a new tip in 15 minutes. Okay, if they don't get it this time, they'll get it next time. We do keep it light. The deal about the time, if you run a 2.5-hour session, you might need to go to 3 hours. Where are you going to get another half hour out of these people? Remember that the club. Or the dancers own the starting time. They'll tell you when you start. The caller owns the ending time. We quit when we quit calling, actually. We stretched it 15 minutes each way. We've been going 7 to 9:30. We now go 6:45 to 9:45. If someone dances in the white group and they have a problem with that, you can show them on a little chart. Well, now you show up 6:45 to 9:15. It's the same thing. And the new ones are like 7 o'clock to sometime. I forget when, but everyone's dancing 2.5 hours. It's just overlap. There's ways to make it work. You have to be a creative solution.
I think just like in a traditional class, you'd come a little bit early if they need some help, and you stay a little bit later, or in between the tips if there's a square having a bad time, leap off the stage and get down there and help them out, and tell them, if you're having any problem. I think also using all the tools that are available to you when you teach your class, just like in a traditional class. We got a mic back there? Good, okay. At a traditional class, if you can run a quick demonstration square in between the tips, I always will start out the first part of the evening, and I'm calling, just warming everybody up and getting them going. I might review a little bit of what I've taught previously and get them through some material and such. And then I put the demonstration square on the floor immediately after that first tip, and I show what we learned last week, and I also show what I'm going to teach that night. And most important of all, I want to get that call in their memory. I want to let them hear the name Spin the Top. Tonight we're going to teach Spin the Top and Single Hinge or whatever, and they hear the name, and I want them to see it, because I know that a third of my people out there that are learning can learn visually without ever having to be in it and experience it. I know that there's another third out there that can just hear the definition, and they're going to start picking this up, and the other third have to be in there and dancing it to be able to learn. But it's just another tool that you can use when you know how people learn, and you to help people out. And so use your demo square, show them, talk about that. A first tip, if you say, we're going to teach the following calls tonight, and you list them out, and they hear those names, and it registers. It's another way of letting it click in a little bit.
Yes, Kevin Ryan from Australia. We have a little bit different over there. All our callers over there virtually run their own club. We pay for our own hall. We run the club and the classes. We sort of do multiple teaching type thing throughout the year. A couple of comments I'd like to make. Most of what's been said by the two gentlemen up there have been very good, and it's mostly what we've experienced. We will take in beginners at any time in our clubs, in my club that I'm going to be associated with and what I'm going to run. And we sort of have angels here, but when we give an intake, we just get very few dancers. We may get 1 or 2 dancers of friends coming in, and then they'll bring a friend about 3 months later. We've still got to bring them in and keep them there, sort of thing, and interesting. Couple of comments. Some people have made the comment about how long the dancers have to wait to do a tip, or as we call them, brackets. We do a little bit different over there. We have 3 numbers in a bracket or tip. We do 2 singing calls and a hash. Or if we're teaching and it goes a little bit longer in the hash, we'll just do the 2, depending on how we feel and what the floor's doing. We make sure, and I've got a very good partner here that does make sure that I have my dancers up dancing as soon as possible. They pay their money. They don't have to sit around for 2 or 3 tips to dance. They'll get up in either the first or second tip. We do virtually 2 levels, a basic and a mainstream tips throughout the night up until supper time. We have a specified supper time, and then after supper, anybody who wants to do maybe a plus or a hard mainstream, if they're up to their standard, then we'll do that after supper, and they know that, and they'll stay there for it. The others can go home, and they know that. Another idea that we had, that I had, at the last tip that I'm going to do as far as the night is concerned with my beginners and my mainstream, I'll get everybody up in that. Have them dance at my day. We only got 2 or 3 squares at the most anyway, so I hope to build that up. I show all my new dancers a new movement in that last tip, but I don't dwell on it. I'll say, this is what we're going to have a look at next week, and they'll come back and they'll have a look at it next week. But I have found that quite beneficial, and I try to do a new program and all that, but I think the basics and up to the mainstream is paying for us. But we have clubs over there that do 3 levels, a basic, a mainstream, and then a plus after supper sort of thing, and it doesn't work.
In Williamson, Tennessee. I'd like to hear anybody's information on 2 points. I think I'm headed in this direction, and I'm real nervous about a few things. We have a couple of programs in our area that's real successful, but not just this way. But 2 things that I can anticipate is going to hurt. One is what are we going to do with the angels? You say get the angels. At this point in time, I am overrun with angels. I've always been encouraged that for the obvious reasons, but after I finish a class, the angels come in for our workshop or whatever. I'll have 8 squares of angels because they get in free. And we'll have maybe 2, 3 squares of class. There's advantages to it, but I have a lot of problems with keeping the angels separated. Even though your committees are working, you get bad feelings, and this one calls that one a name, and so on, and so on and so forth. So other callers in the area I know that have tried classes have had problems, like when with already trying this, when you say you go 10 weeks, then you bring the next group back and overcharging them or not charging them. And I could talk for a long time about it, but that's an area I'd like to know just to help somebody succeeding and how to handle the charging. And the other is, after we get these people to a certain point, I'm overrun with dancers now, but I mean by that need more attention. But what do we do with them when they get through this program of 1 year's time? Do we not need some basic clubs or something here for these people to go into that moves on?
Okay, I'd like to address that. First of all, about the angels, you'd handle it just like you'd handle a traditional class. You really have to make sure that your angels know the parameters. Well, how to be a successful angel. There's a lot of documents out. CALLERLAB has one, USDA has one, Legacy has one, on rules of being an angel and how you handle yourself as an angel in class. You're right. You can have people that are out there and they're causing more havoc, and I think it's important to have harmony amongst your angels. If there's bickering back and forth, I've been in the position where I've asked them to step outside or go to the coffee shop down the street if they're going to argue. You don't need that kind of stuff in your class. So treat it the same way you would, and make sure that the people that are going to be your angels have a list of how to be a successful angel and what you expect from them ahead of time. About charging for class, I think that most of you realize that if you take country western dance lessons or ballroom dance lessons, you pay far more money than you would when you take square dance lessons. And I find that the new dancers come in and they don't object to paying the exact same fee to dance the first half of the evening as those that come in and dance the first and the second half of the evening. They're coming, they're enjoying themselves, they're having a long evening, there's food out there they can eat. Make sure you have food. I don't know. Where can you go and dance for an hour and a half and eat and leave? And you can't go to the movie for that, So I don't think that that's as big an issue as we might make it, or as our dancers that have been dancing a long time might make it. No, the people that come in as angels do not pay. And I think that if you have a problem being overrun with angels, then maybe the angels should be paying. Now the angels are dancing, yeah. And although this is a situation that I don't have control over, but I think you have a good point there. The other thing is, are the angels eating? Yeah, they're bringing the food. Most of the time, those people are the people that bring the food and the sandwiches and the stuff like that. So they're paying it away. The other thing that I wanted to address is, what do you do when they get to the end? I'm fortunate enough where we're going all year round, and we start every 17 weeks. In January or in September, we start a class. We start again in January, and we start again in May or the end of April. And I like that time because we have daylight savings time, and you find that a lot of people at daylight savings time are coming home from work, and there's more daylight left, and they're ready to do something. So it's a great time to start a class. We used to do every 13 weeks and had 4 starts a year, but the problem with that summer start is that it was a tough class to start in the summertime. I like the longer class. The other thing about this class is for the first 17 weeks, I teach the basic program. And the second, which is the first phase, from 7 to 8:30. From 8:30 to 10, I'm teaching mainstream and plus, because that's the destination in our area. But if I could teach the mainstream, I'd be happy to just do that. But the bottom line is that many times when dancers go through each of these phases, they're not ready to go on and dance with a club. And we're fortunate that this particular club, at their club dances, has every other tip mainstream and plus. They invite their new dancers to their club and to dance with them. So most of them that take advantage of that have more floor time and are able to go a little faster than those that just come class night. And so we find that many people repeat the second phase over again. They go through the mainstream and the plus program over. They have a workshop badge. After they graduate, they have a workshop badge. We encourage them to come back and workshop. And if they have a workshop badge, they pay, because they're coming back and they're getting this review again. Once they become angels and become full club members and such, that they then come in for free. But we find that this way we can keep them coming back and repeating the phase. Done. We got a microphone back there. We just need...
Right here. Brent Maudsley from Vancouver, BC. Mike, you just touched on that, but what I wanted to find out from yourself and Nasser is what movements do you put into your different segments of class? Nasser's using 10 weeks, you're using 17, you're going right through plus, and what are you doing, Nasser? Can you guys explain that?
We'd recently modified our plan in Shreveport, where we're starting every 17 weeks also. We started every 8 weeks for a long time. We taught 24 weeks to mainstream. We're now teaching, 17 twice? 34. That's how many weeks we're teaching through plus in my area. we're supposed to go through Plus. It's a Plus area. We don't have a mainstream program. If we teach them in class, they don't have a place to dance. We need to establish a mainstream program big time in Shreveport. It's easier to do if you're using this system, because if you have a mainstream program now, let's say we're going to establish a mainstream program first, who's going to dance it? With this system, there's a lot of new dancers. That solves that problem. They do need a place to dance. People's told me in Shreveport, the dance level in Shreveport has really gone down because there's just so many new people into square dancing. Guilty as charged.
It's nice to have new people, I'll tell you. It's the same problem we're having with traditional classes. You get them to the end, and they're just not up to dancing the program in the area. So I don't think there's any difference in the quality of dancers coming out of a program like this. I don't think that there's a big difference. Many of them still need the review, and we have traditional classes in our area that the dancers will finish that traditional class. They've already gone through Plus. They'll come back and they'll repeat phase 2 with the group that I'm working. And we try to encourage them. I try to encourage the people in my class to go to other classes on a different night, so that the more dancing experiences they have, the better after they're going to be able to go out there and dance with the clubs.
Craig Abercrombie, Portland, Oregon. You see Jim Hattrick's name on here. Jim and I worked together real close, and he sold me on the 8 and 8 program. To answer your question, Don, about where the basic dancers go, mainstream, of course, is entry level in our area. But what we did a lot of talking, but we finally started every first Friday, October through May, because we shut down for the summer. We have a basic level dance. We do one round in between. We now find that we even have plus dancers coming to this dance. We average 5 to 7 squares. We take those basics and actually at that dance apply a little extended on it. But they know not only are they going to get them in different positions, we may do hexes with it or progressives. We also do harmony work. And like you heard Jerry and Daryl last night, and Jerry and Tony, dancers love that. And we have voices that blend real well together. But with that program, it's working. But we do it. It's not a club thing. We're doing it, and we've got people supporting it from that basic program. They have a place, and they know. And they're telling their friends, you got to get up because this 8-week program, we're all going over there on the first Friday. And they have a good time with it.
It makes a big difference to provide other avenues or other dances for your dancers. I know in the area that we're at, Dick and Gail, you guys have a once a month dance, and we push it at our new dancer class and get them out there. I want them to go out and dance with different callers. They do a great job, and it's a good dance. From what I hear, they come back and they're all wired up because they've been at another dance, danced to another caller, had a great time, and we're providing someplace else for them to dance. It makes a big difference. Walt?
Yeah, just a real quick one, coming back a little bit on some of what Don asked and a couple others have commented on. We talk about angels, and angels aren't just people who can help during the dance. One of the questions had to deal with getting people to sometimes come back and do a little more when they need it and other such things. I have plus and mainstream clubs back to back, and I'm trying to work into a multi-cycle again. I did that years ago, but I watch for angels who really seem to come and like to dance in the newer dancer segments. And in my case, that means this is maybe angels from my plus group who come over on a Friday night to dance with mainstream. And I've picked out these folks and said, well, I'm pleased you're coming over, and I ask them why. And you always will find these people in your group who will tell you, well, we like to come over and dance the mainstream because you do things a little different. We learn new things. So then I've latched onto those angels and said, that's a great attitude. Why don't you bring some of the class folks over? And so one of my angel functions is actually to latch on to some of the folks that they see that are maybe having a little trouble and say, hey, we can go to this mainstream class on Friday night. Why don't you come along with us, and you'll get an extra night of dancing, and you'll get some more practice. And that's how I get that transition to work. Use your angels for that.
Good point. Good point. Yes.
Yeah, you said 17-week sessions, and start in September and in January, and then in May. You do go through the summer?
Yes, and then the May group goes. We do 2 sessions right on through the summer. The phase 1 and phase 2, we call them.
Okay, and phase 1 is through basic. Phase 2 is mainstream and plus.
And plus, right.
And you're I'm losing track here somewhere. You start, let's say, basic in September, and continue with basic in January. Right. And starting a mainstream plus at the same time.
So basically, when we start from 7 to 8:30, I'm going through the basic program. I'm starting a group right there and going all the way through for 17 weeks. At the same exact time, from 8:30 to 10 o'clock, I'm also teaching mainstream and plus to the group that has been dancing with the previous class. And just,
Okay.
Right. So that's I've just found that it works real good. Some groups I can go right through the basic program and maybe even a little bit of mainstream, but most of the time I try to get them real grounded on the basics and then get them through, and then the rest of the time take them up through plus. It's the same problem with the programs that we're all trying to work with, and hopefully we'll come in the next few years to a resolution and a program that we can that is realistic for our new dancers. I would love to stop at the basic program. I'm getting on my soapbox, but I love that program, and it's everything else comes out of it, and it's nice to be able to dance that. Brent.
Thanks. Brent Monsley again. You're asking your dancers to accomplish a lot of almost 100 movements in 34 weeks, right? So you must are you using then just the standard applications, and then you introduce extended applications later when they're dancing in your club, or are you also using maybe special teaching techniques to make things easier to learn quicker?
I don't use just standard applications. I like to include different applications, and much of the time we're just playing around or horsing around. But I find that I do use demonstration. I do get my portable mic on, and I get out on the floor and I demonstrate things in between the tip. I show them styling. Usually about 3 or 4 weeks into class, I'm on the floor with the class coordinator or somebody out that I can find, and I start looking at handholds and things and working and show them how to swing. But I do that in between the tips. So I'm moving and I'm working a lot at the class, but I have a great time at it, and I try to get around and talk to everybody. And I find that even some of my angels will want to walk people through there. And I know some of you can kind of cringe about having your angels teaching out there, but we try to get try to use every avenue we can. And as I was saying earlier, when I mentioned the calls I'm going to speak or teach that evening, I'm just trying to plant those calls in their brain, because I know that what we're trying to do is to get them to take these calls that they're learning and lock it into their long-term memory. As most of you know, the first 3 or 4 times you teach a call, or they even hear that call, it's sitting in their short-term memory, and unless it locks in farther into their long-term memory, it falls right out again. So dancers need to dance that movement for a period of about 3 or 4 weeks before it falls into that long-term memory where it's going to stay there and it's not going to fall out again. So there's some good material from the Education Committee at CALLERLAB. There's also some good material that's on the Internet right now about learning concepts. And there's one caller out of Florida that is publishing periodic articles about, maybe some of them are picking up, about teaching a class. Now, these are just his concepts. He's a teacher in Florida. I don't agree with all of them, but I sure glean some things out that I use. And I think the more you can learn about teaching and about the learning process himself, you're going to maximize your people's ability to retain what they've learned, and it makes a big difference.
I wanted to clarify some things before the tape ran out. This year's the first year. We all talk the talk. It's time to walk the walk. The classes I've got going right now, I'm going to teach them through mainstream. They will graduate in May, and they won't have a place to dance. They can't go on a Saturday night and dance. We're going to address that when we get to it. There's about 30 of them. I think that it's time to address that problem in my area and start a mainstream level. Another deal. Back to the question on the substitute caller. When I'm out of town, the guy that helps me shows up there every week, and he does call approximately 3 tips a night. I believe I explained it. It was 3 hours with no breaks, and it helps to have that guy there big time.
Any other comments? Yes.
Hi, Shirley Shiner from Chicago. I don't know what I am. I'm sort of beginning to learn how to call. I am a teacher, and I've taught for a really long time. I was just wondering, has there been any exploration of using videos, of making a video of part of the dance, or some of the things that people have done, and maybe have us like go home and look at it before they came back, or things that you know that you've watched dancers do, and say, oh gosh, this is something you might want to look at again, just so you have a little something they can go back to and feel comfortable with.
I've had dancers actually set up their video camera and film their square while they're dancing.
Is there some kind of way of maybe doing this so that it's part of the program that you have, so there's something you can give to any of the people who'd want it?
I think it's just another avenue that you can use to reinforce what you're doing. There's also, I have a list that I printed up of all the available videos that I know of for square dancing, the basic program, the mainstream, the plus, and I hand out that list to anybody that's interested, and I usually announce it. Anybody that's interested in a video of square dance lessons, terrific, because some people really can see it and learn that way. Also, the square dancer books that are available, the Sets and Old American Square Dance Society books, are great for some people. Some people will see that and learn right from those books. Others will learn from a video. Others have to be physically involved in dancing and to learn. But anything that you can provide these people to help them is a plus.
In my class, there's some videotapes that they ordered out of American Square Dance magazine. They're going around. I think that the previous year's class passed them around, like they say. You take them home, and I don't know. I see these videos like change hands, and I think that's what it is. I think it's square dancing.
You know, it's interesting. We have the same thing, and I've seen videos pass around. Actually, one I thought that was going around, I thought was a square dance lessons. It was actually river dance that was going around. But that it's great. Have your dancers pass them. Once they've listened to it and once they're through it, it's a great thing to pass on. So even if the club can purchase a set and have it available for people who want to take them home, that's another good idea too. Anything further? Yes, Tim. Why don't you grab a mic and we'll talk a little bit. This program is a program that is highly adaptable, and it's not without, and some of these problems that we talk about are some of the same problems that are in a traditional class, and I think if you hit them head on, and you have the enthusiasm and the excitement, and don't think for a minute that you don't have to promote lessons just the way you always do. It's really important. Pick up the promo pack that Legacy has available from Stan Burdick, and use some ideas in there if what you're doing is not working. Tim?
Just, I want to respond to Don. I'm going to tell you about something that works well for me and something that doesn't work well for me. Respond to both your issues. One about the money. I have a 10-week program that 5 of them in a year, and its intention is to bring people into the activity and directly into a class. And I finally convinced the local clubs to start classes every 2 months. So each club starts a new class every 2 months. So I have 10 weeks of people, maximum 20 weeks, and then they're available to go to a class. I charge them $100 for the 10 weeks, one time only. So if they never ever want to move into a class and always want to come to my 10-week program for the rest of their lives, they never have to pay again. The other the problem I have now is that once they make the transition from my 10-week program into another caller's basic class, they disappear. They're gone, and they never ever come back to me. And we're losing them. I don't know why, but the transition's not working. Even though we have a new class, the transitions don't seem to be working. So, and I'm at a loss. But
do you have any theories as to why it might possibly not be working? Just take a guess. Take a stab. Wild guess.
Well, I think that if I was going to be honest about it, I just think that the styles between the callers are radically different. And I think that these people who have been dancing for 10 weeks get into a bit of a groove, and 10 weeks is not enough time, or even 20 weeks is not enough time for me to pass them on to and have somebody else try to pick up something. I just think that maybe I need to spend, maybe it's me, maybe I need to spend more time with these people before I pass them on. I'm not sure. I really have no idea why they quit.
Mr. Crawford, get you a new caller that's been calling 2 years. You can be his mentor. All he's got to do is show up at your class, and he'll call 2 or 3 tips a night, and then they've danced to 2 callers all along.
I have tried that. I have failed miserably.
But that has worked. Some clubs have a committee to review if people are ready to move up. I thought the Valley Trailers had one. It's hard to put yourself in the position as a caller to tell a guy, hey, you're not ready to go up. You know, you got to stay and repeat phase 1 again. But if you have a committee of 3 or 4 people, it's easier to do. We found that to be effective in some places.
Yeah, the point like to make here is that with a multi-cycle program, you don't have to tell them that they're not ready to move up to the next program. All you have to do is ask them to stay an Angel this set, because it's I mean, I guess in all words you're trying to tell them not to move up, but for most of them, they are happy. They realize they're in over their head, and they're happy to stay an Angel, and they're happy to come back and be the smart ones, you know. And you've selected them to be the people that'll help with that phase as the new dancers come in. And many times they have people they want to bring, and so they can dance with them and not feel pressured to move to the next phase. But that's all part of the amount of material you have to teach at the particular class, and that's a whole other subject. Listen, we'd like to thank you for joining us this morning. How about a nice hand for Nasser Shukayr, Shreveport, Louisiana? If you have any questions, please also see Nasser and myself and give us your name and address if you're using this program as a contact person. We would love to be able to list your name in the document so that if somebody has a question, they could call you. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the convention.